Gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Clinton, just a few minutes ago, you said some of you have raised the video. Raised the video? You raised the video. At 10:08 on September 11th, 2012, you raised the video. At 10:08, with Americans still fighting for their lives, an hour and a half before the attack ends, you raised the video. So I want to go back to that 10:08 statement. In our first round, you said that the statement was not meant to explain the type of attack or the cause of the attack. So let's look at your statement. Official press statement from the Department of State, statement on the attack in Benghazi, President Hillary Rodham Clinton, Secretary of State, Washington, D.C., September 11th, 2012. 12 sentences in this statement. I'm going to focus on the one. Some have sought to justify this vicious behavior as a response to inflammatory material posted on the internet. There's a cause, there's a motive presented there, and there's only one motive. You say this, you say, inflammatory material caused vicious behavior. Vicious behavior that led and resulted in the deaths of 4 Americans. There sure seems to be cause there.
Congressman, may I read what I said? What I said is that I condemn in the strongest terms the attack on our mission in Benghazi today. As we work to secure our personnel and facilities, we have confirmed that one of our State Department officers was killed. We are heartbroken by this terrible loss. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family and those who have suffered in this attack. This evening, I called Libyan President Magharif to coordinate additional support to protect Americans in Libya. President Magharif expressed his condemnation and condolences and pledged his government's full cooperation. Some have sought to justify this vicious behavior as a response to inflammatory material posted on the internet. The United States deplores any intentional effort to denigrate the religious beliefs of others. Our commitment to religious tolerance goes back to the very beginning of our nation, but let me be clear. There is never any justification for violent acts of this kind. In light of the events of today, the United States government is working with partner countries around the world to protect our personnel, our missions, and American citizens worldwide.
Right, and I'm asking, you said the first round there was no motive, no cause. You weren't trying to explain the cause of the attack. It sure seems you did.
Well, Congressman,
you presented inflammatory material was the reason for the vicious behavior. Is that not a cause and effect?
Well, that's not what it says. What I said was some have.
You know what you said? You read the whole thing.
I did.
I'm asking about that one sentence because earlier you said there was no cause, no motive presented. I think there was. And that's what I think most of the American people thought.
Well, I know there was a great deal of news coverage that looked at the events in Cairo, looked at what happened in Benghazi, and drew some comparisons and maybe even connections. I know, as we've just heard from Congressman Schiff, there was a lot of fast-moving analysis by the intelligence community to try to make sense of all of this. And I can only tell you from the perspective of having been
Secretary Clinton, hang on a second. If the intelligence may have changed some, but your story didn't. That's the point.
Well, that is
privately, your story was much different than it was publicly. Again, you said to the Egyptian Prime Minister, we know the attack in Libya had nothing to do with the film. It was a planned attack, not a protest. You said to your family, terrorists killed 2 of our good people. So your story privately is much different than what you're telling the American people. The intelligence may have changed. The video may have had an impact in other places, but in Benghazi it didn't, and you tried to put them all together. That's what bothers us. Let me show you a slide here. This is from September 14th. The first statement's by Jay Carney. Let's be clear, these protests were a reaction to a video that had spread to the region. We have no information to suggest that Benghazi was a pre-planned attack. The statement below is from your press person in Libya. Sends this to Greg Hicks and to the experts in the Near Eastern Affairs Bureau, the same people who said Susan Rice was off the reservation on 5 networks. Here's what they get. Here's what she says to them. Benghazi, more terrorist attack than a protest. We want to distinguish, not conflate the events. This was a well-planned attack. So again, privately, the experts in the Near Eastern Affairs Bureau, the experts on Libya, know that this was a well-planned attack. But publicly, Jay Carney is saying the same thing you're saying publicly. We have no information that this was pre-planned. This was caused by a video.
Congressman, the next morning at 9:59, I gave another statement, and I listened carefully to what you said, and you kept talking about cause. Well, the word cause is not in my statement of the night before.
I'm referring to what you said to me in our first exchange a few hours ago.
No, well, I'm sorry, Congressman. If I haven't been clear, I will try to be clearer. I was talking about people throughout the region trying to justify attacks on our facilities, as we saw later in the week, and justifying their behavior and repeating it and using the fact of the video not only to arouse crowds, as we saw in the video clips that the ranking member played, but also that would deter governments from coming to our rescue because they would be perhaps ambivalent about doing so. So you're right. I mentioned the video because I feared what would happen, and in fact, it did happen. And in the next morning, the night before was a brief statement that we put out because we knew we had lost Sean, and I felt an obligation to tell that to the American people.
Madam Secretary?
The next morning, I gave a much longer statement, and it was very clear. Heavily armed militants assaulted the compound and